Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm a Vedic astrologer uh, located in New Bedford, Massachusetts. I've been a Vedic astrologer for roughly 35 years now, and I do this show every week to give you an appraisal of what the planets are doing in the sky, how that influences us, the choices we have to make, and the basically the conditions we're facing in the world at large. Uh, some of you may notice that I have had a considerable amount of hair removed, which is actually a great relief because the other one, when I was a young man, I liked really long hair. I'm still not entirely averse to it, but it's after a while it gets to be kind of a nuisance, and I look a little bit unkempt and uh, maybe a bit older than I really feel. So here I am, newly shorn, and with you again on this Sunday, August 24th, 2025. It's been an interesting week. We'll talk about that in a second, and we'll give you an idea of what's coming up over the next week. I haven't, I'm not really going to focus on any special chart this week. I will mention a couple of things that have flown by or caught my attention, and those are mainly certain political things that have happened. And I removed my glasses mainly because they were glaring on the screen, and I can still see the chart pretty well without them. So, but I wouldn't try to drive like this. So if you want to contact me for lessons or for a reading, my phone number, and you can text me at this number, is 508-525-0001. Again, that's 508-525-0001. And for those of you who prefer to take the email route, also you can WhatsApp me at that number. I'm on WhatsApp. And for other purposes, if you don't feel comfortable texting me, because that gives me your phone number, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can email me at garygomesg@gmail.com. That's a little safer for people. It's less, maybe it's less invasive, and you might feel more comfortable doing that. So, also, I would ask you to subscribe, like, share, give a thumbs up if you feel so inclined, and we'll get on with the rest of the presentation right now. So, one of the things I mentioned last week was you may see certain reversals happening in the way people felt about things, or the way they acted. Interestingly enough, and this story, so I'm not sure how many people heard this particular story. But Hillary Clinton is not displeased with the way Donald Trump is handling Ukraine and a variety of foreign policy issues and working with the foreign policy establishment. So that was something that I think may surprise a lot of people. Uh, some people could interpret that as a defensive measure. Maybe she's worried she'll get indicted. I don't know. And I just want to talk about reversals as well because we had a former national security advisor and former UN ambassador, um, John Bolton, was raided, and the ostensible reason given uh, was that his net worth didn't seem to match his income. It seems like there's he's making more money than he should based upon, or he's worth more than he should be based upon his income and his past work efforts. Now, keep in mind before you get very upset about Bolton being investigated, I just uh, want to bring you back to the Bush administration, the George W. Bush administration. George W. Bush had to appoint him as UN ambassador uh, when the Senate was in recess. He couldn't get him through normal channels. So Bolton isn't a good guy. Um, it's Is it revenge? I don't know. It could be, but uh, but but basically his reputation is. I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. It's spotty at best. Obviously he's an expert. I'm not. But I don't want to make this too political because that's not the point of this. But again, we're looking at reversals of fortune. Also, we had the the Letitia James case, the award that Trump had to pay uh, nullified, or not the reward, the penalty Trump had to pay nullified. We also did have some reversals in what was happening in terms of um, the the apparent progress that seems to be being made with Ukraine and Russia. So that's still up in the air. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because you're going to be seeing a lot of this over the next few days in particular, over the next couple of weeks in particular. You're going to be seeing a lot of reversals. And it won't just be connected with politics, it'll be reversals connected with entertainment, with business, with a lot of activities. So just when you thought you were um, everything was mapped out and moving the way that you wanted it to move, everyone should prepare themselves for some reversals or for some uh, upsets or concerns. And so the reason is it seems to be happening more so with governments around the world. So I can also think of examples overseas, essentially where there were demonstrations in Israel, there were demonstrations in London, as predicted against uh, Prime Minister Starmer. I don't want to make him sound like a Nazi. I'm sorry. And and so you're starting to see government demonstrations breaking out in like little patches around the world. That'll get more intense over the next couple of weeks. The other thing is the Sun K2 moon. We have a new moon today. So this is almost a prelude to uh, the solar eclipse that's going to happen towards the end of next month because we have Sun, K2, and Moon in the same sign. Okay, that's essentially so it's almost. I don't want to overstate this, but it's almost like a double eclipse, and it's a chance for people to change direction, to look back, and say, okay, this isn't working for me. I want to get rid of this from my life, and I want to push this back and try a new direction. So that Sun K2 moon actually frees you to a certain extent from some commitments or from some prejudices you had, or from maybe from some behavior that's boxing you in. So I realize I'm sounding more like a Western astrologer right now than a Vedic astrologer, but this is actually K2 actually liberates you from by putting up obstructions or by taking things away or by reversing things. It actually makes you stop and say, hmm, I wonder why I was headed in that particular direction anyway. And it'll make you, it'll make individuals, not you personally, but it'll make individuals back off from moments of pride, from moments of intense ego involvement, and they'll stop and think about what they really want. So this week, I would say this, the rest of the, I would say the period through October 15th should be a time in which most people are examining what they really want out of life as opposed to the direction they're committed to or the direction they've been moving in. And it's a good time to get rid of things. I got rid of some hair, right? And also, at least from the chart, you try to dispose of things you don't need anymore. Okay? So this doesn't necessarily mean you have to abolish all your relationships. But let's say if there's been a destructive pattern you've been engaged in, or something where you felt like you had to control things, it's kind of time to let it go and let nature take its course, as opposed to trying to control every single movement. Now that'll be tough because what what else is happening in the chart is we have a Mars Saturn opposition, and that Mars Saturn opposition can mean expensive repairs to vehicles. Uh, Venus is in the same sign with Mercury. That's actually a good combination in Cancer, so that's actually good for um, emotional connection with people, although we can still be a little bit short-tempered because of this perfectionist tendency of Mars and Saturn. And Jupiter is over here in Gemini, so this makes us more friendly with people overall. So it's a good time to make connections, to learn things. But also, I would say, let's say if you've been, what I would say, too hung up on tradition, too hung up on doing things exactly the right way, and it's annoying you, it's also time to talk with other people and figure out um, why things aren't going as you hoped they would. And you can actually learn something from this particular combination. This is a really um, powerful, this is what's called technically, especially for Geminis and Cancers, this is a variation of what's called the Saraswati Yoga, which it's not an exact Saraswati Yoga, but basically Saraswati Yoga gives proficiency in the arts, music, but also just in terms of general intelligence. To be ideal, Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury would either have to be in friendly or own signs in order for this to manifest properly. But the proximity of Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter is enough to generate that kind of intellectual activity and brilliance that Saraswati embodies. And it gives us a certain amount of emotional brilliance for people right now as well. So your intuition is good, people's intuition is good, and you'll find people a little bit more cordial, except for certain times of the day, like watch out for people, especially between, I would say between uh, 8 and 11 roughly. They'll be a little bit more snappy or more difficult than normal. Uh, the start of the day, especially the pre-dawn hours, um, are really good. And overall, from the chart, um, it's a good time to, number one, uh, like I said, re-examine investments or efforts and see where you're wasting time and see where you can utilize time. It's time to basically give up the ego and let people help you out. It's a time for new thoughts, new innovations, new movement over the next few months. A lot of people who have seemed to have been stuck, especially tomorrow, because that'll be the end of the Mercury retrograde backlash. People will start to move forward and start to be able to make decisions about things. So if you're hovering, trying to figure out whether or not to buy something or whether or not to engage in a new venture, wait until next week to do that. And I would probably recommend waiting until around Wednesday, mainly because tomorrow most individuals are going to be um, too picky, too exacting. They'll want things to be done perfectly because of that Mars-Saturn opposition, and that'll also deaden progress. But you'll start to see a lot of progress around Wednesday, Thursday, uh, and going into Friday of next week. So this isn't a bad chart for the week, but in terms of financial gains, a little bit muted. But again, this can bring new friendships in. It can bring in unusual friendships. It can bring in spiritual friends. And the other thing of it is it can bring in unexpected developments from work. Uh, I would expect most people to find their friends still largely critical of them. It's not because they're intentionally trying to be nasty, it's because they're just trying to ask more questions and get more clarification from you. Okay? And also, certain things, let's say, you could get away with before, um, because they were largely matters that didn't uh, need a lot of attention. Um, then you're not going to be able to get away with for the next couple of months. The Mars-Saturn opposition will make every single thing seem like it has to be redone and reviewed and just stopped. So I think it's kind of an interesting period, especially for people who have planets in Leo, Aquarius, or sun signs, those sun signs, because they'll feel like, I won't say uh, they'll re-examine their whole life. It's not quite so dramatic as that. But it looks like they'll have to take new strategies or adopt new modes of behavior, especially in terms of um, what they want from life or what they value in life. Okay, so there are going to be certain things, especially over the next month, that you'll say to yourself, "Yeah, this really isn't that important to me. I really don't care that much about it." And you'll have new directions which will be connected with property, with um, action, and also with even with physical health. Okay, so that Mars in Virgo is difficult for physical health, especially digestion for people. And that Saturn aspect can be difficult for it can hit certain signs in terms of walking or in terms of mobility. Okay, so so essentially this chart isn't a bad chart. Right now, both Rahu and Ketu are stationary direct. Not every Vedic astrologer uses that measurement. I like to use that measurement because this becomes kind of a significant time in the Vedic chart. If you have the nodes, if you have And again, the nodes are, they're not real physical entities. They're how we track eclipses of the sun and the moon, right? So uh, the retrograde and direct nodes, normally most Vedic astrologers just use mean nodes, which means that it's the average motion of the node through the sign. Um, the true node was introduced, I think, in the 1950s or 1960s, and by a Western astrologer. I think it was by Michael Erlewine. And it's a convenient tool because I see a lot of significant events happening when these particular things happen. So we're seeing a lot of activity happening in places like Russia, India. Um, let me just see, um, Trump is apparently taking some action against Venezuela, or he's moving warships down towards Venezuela. So these are like significant events. Okay, so um, it's that's why I like to pay attention to these things because they can indicate changes in direction or changes in movement, which can be like markers. They happen relatively frequently. They're not really all that rare a phenomenon, excuse me, but they are important. So K2, along with Sun, should watch out for your physical health, watch out for paying attention, especially on the roads. Uh, Moon over here, there's a tendency to shut off emotionally with this and not care for either yourself or others all that much. The Moon K2 conjunction can make us a little bit weird or closed off. And Mars being in the second house can make us feel a little harsh, a little bit difficult to deal with. Um, Saturn, Mars, it's an expensive week, if I'm honest with you folks. It's not so Saturn retrograde means we're going back and dealing with things that we should have taken care of, especially mechanical issues. And but that but the good news is this week is there'll still be a certain amount of optimism, especially financially and emotionally, and also Jupiter in the ninth house, basically good for social communications. With the Mars Saturn opposition, politically, you'll probably see a lot of things heat up, mainly because one side will want everything done one way, and another side will want things done exactly the opposite. So that will cause some problems. And again, you're seeing splinters um, I would say in both parties right now. It's not in the United States, and you're seeing splintering of a consensus that seems to have existed in Europe, uh, not necessarily about things like Ukraine, but about its domestic policies, uh, which are uh, which are significant. Um, Certain countries that so economically, Sun could give a little bit of a dip in the stock market, but there's also news. There's also rumors of a drop in interest rates, which essentially I think caused the stock market to go up just recently. So again, like I said, it's all these kind of mixed signals that are going on. So you'll see, I think what you'll see over the next few weeks is the stock market go up. Some inflationary pressure from the tariffs. I don't think there will be none, but not as much as was expected. And over the next 3 months, like maybe a small economic downturn. We've been in essentially some people in certain occupational groups are having difficulty getting work. Um, that's uh, obvious, but it's hurting more the college educated folks overall, at least from what I can tell from the economic projections, and it's not hurting um, people 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 with skills. But if inflation hits, then that'll hit everybody. But I'm still only expecting to see very mild inflation, at least from this chart. Probably for another couple of months, and then it'll subside a lot. And that's mainly because of the Mars Saturn aspect in this particular chart. Saturn is an aspecting Jupiter. That's really what causes the highest levels of inflation. And that won't happen for a while, okay, for a few years. So, so at least, so we'll see inflation bumps, definitely, because of Saturn Mars over the next couple of months, but that'll ameliorate, I think, in November. Uh, the other thing what we want to look at is uh, there'll be a lot of countries, again, consistent with what I've said before, a lot of countries just uh, abandoning or trying to recall their government. Abandoning is too strong a word. Maybe trying to resist or even topple their governments over the next couple of months. And I think that's the most significant thing. So we're in for like about a 6 month period of things like that. Okay. But the pressure cooker will start this month. Okay. So let's go over to the individual signs. So I'm not going to look at individual charts. I probably will look at India's chart and China's chart next week. Um, and so I'll try to look at Israel's chart and a variety of countries around the world, but I feel right now isn't a good time to look at it. Uh, the other thing is, one thing I have noticed is the media has gotten more active since Venus and Mercury have been in the sign. This is the United States, eighth house, and so 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 basically, what normally happens and what normally happens is when planets hit this house, you'll see essentially signs that the media starts to get more active. They'll start to look for scandals and look for disruption. This includes things like the Epstein case. But as Jupiter, and again, I watched this phenomenon for many, many years, as Jupiter goes towards Cancer, which it will over the next year or so, the nation tends to become, especially the United States, tends to become more conservative. Why? Because Jupiter's essentially a traditional planet. It's not really so it's it's tied to tradition. Saturn's really the non-traditional planet. In Vedic astrology, Saturn and Rahu are really the non-traditional, the ones who want to disrupt things. Um, and Jupiter wants things pretty much status quo, traditional, like the way we understood things to be for a large portion of our lives. And that could mean a return to um, more democratic um, values associated with the Democratic Party, but that hasn't been my experience. It's been more connected with things like the Iraq War. Here we go 12 years before that. Uh, 12 years before that, uh, we had, so 12 years before that, we had the Clinton presidency, which was essentially a conservative Democratic presidency. 12 years before that, we had the Reagan presidency. 12 years before that, we had the election of Richard Nixon. So, so essentially, is um, in the broad scope of things, it doesn't look favorable for radical reform. Now, again, there are other factors other than Jupiter um, that are connected with shifts in domestic policy. But Jupiter, like I said, from my observation of it, Jupiter tends to be a more conservative, not a less conservative planet, a more traditional planet. Okay. So that's just my bias. You can take that and do with it what you will. It's not, I'm not the final authority on these things. So basically, let's get into your individual charts for this week. And we'll go from there. Okay. So let's start with Aries. This is April 15th to May 15th. The Aruda Lagna, or the sign connected with the self, is in the first house. And for Aries, this means some struggles or some jealousy at work, but also good potential for financial success and overall happiness at home. Um, some politeness, some hesitancy to take chances for the sign, but good relationships with wife. Wife is intelligent, articulate, and well-spoken, so this is a good placement for this sign in terms of domestic happiness. In terms of career, uh, career does indicate a lot of expenses, a lot of travel involved, and maybe dealing with behind the scenes problems. And Rahu, your friends are probably going to not, they'll promise a lot, but not deliver a lot, if I'm honest with you. So again, this sign is going to have financial burdens for the next couple of years, if I'm truthful. The lesson, I would say, by within a couple of months when Mars is in Libra. But again, this is kind of a difficult period for Aries, just in general. But this week, this month is not quite so bad. Taurus, this is May 15th to June 15th. This has the Lord of the first house is in the third house, so a lot of things this sign wants, it will be able to have, it will be able to put together, and it will gain a lot of money. Some distress at home, some changes at home, some changes with family. Mars is in the fifth house, arguments with children, but very strong creative impulse for Taurus. Relationship life, probably be additional fights with relationship partners. Some fame is connected with the sign and with Scorpio. We'll get to Scorpio in a little while, but uh, definitely some recognition at work, but slow financial gains for Taurus, unfortunately. And um, the Lord of the 12th house is in the fifth house, so some problems communicating with children, definitely. Expenses caused by children. So, and if you don't have children, it'll be creative activities or maybe even a little bit of overindulgence. Uh, let's see now, overindulgence, drinking, sports, things like that. For Gemini, Jupiter is in the first house. This isn't a bad placement. This sign will have a lot of attention. So this is June 15th through July 16th birthday. And essentially this particular sign, Jupiter, and again, we're counting both rising signs. If you know your Vedic rising sign or your Vedic moon sign would be affected by these placements. Jupiter is in the first house, and is the Lord of the seventh house and the 10th house. So a lot of focus in this sign on career and relationship life. Um, Overall, the Venus and Mercury in Cancer isn't a bad placement. It does indicate, though, there are intense emotions and emotional worry. Mercury in Cancer isn't really Mercury's best placement. It'll focus on problems with family and family desires being unreasonable. Um, so this is where this positive conjunction becomes negative. Um, and you know, so there'll be expenses because of that. Sun, K2, and Moon are in the third house. This is not a bad combination. It gives you and like I said, it's a willingness to give up and let people who are more expert than you handle the situation. So if you've been trying to figure out a way to take back control of your life, the best thing to do over the next couple of weeks is do nothing and let people who are charged with that particular function uh, work on that. Mars is in the fourth house, some disputes with family matters. That does show up again with family members, excuse me. House Lord is Venus, so children are a bit overindulgent and a bit spoiled, at least from this combination. Sixth house Lord is in the fourth house, so again, there will be family struggles for this sign. Overall, this is not a bad chart. I'm emphasizing that it's probably good for money for this sign, but I'm also emphasizing there are a lot of hidden factors in a Vedic chart, and there are a lot of negatives for this sign this month as well. Mars is aspecting the seventh house, so Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars are aspecting Sagittarius right now, which is the United States rising sign. But getting back to Gemini, this particular combination indicates that there's a lot of pressure and a lot of disappointment connected with relationship life um, for Gemini. So again, this is um, it's not the end of the world. It just feels very disappointing for this sign, and that will probably persist for about another month. Um, but at least there will be some new communications tomorrow about relationship and career life. Rahu is in the ninth house. There's a lot of contact with new ways of doing things, new teachers, new guides, new bosses. Saturn's in the 10th house. Career life is good, but seems to be you seem to be treading water. And overall, this isn't a bad chart. Jupiter in the first house largely protects this chart, but the Saturn and Mars aspects are hurting relationship life. For Cancer, Cancer has Venus and Mercury in the first house. This is July 15th through August 15th. This is actually a relatively good placement, uh, but it does indicate a lot of spending on desires and also a lot of courage to pursue desires, but it'll cost you. It'll cost you money. Um, Sun, K2, Moon in the second house. There's some uncertainty about financial future for this sign. it's not a disaster, it's just uncertainty, and maybe it's time to rethink expenditures or how you're making your money, and what you're charging people, or what you're uh, or how you're or how the family is spending money. Fourth house Lord is in the first house. There's a lot of attention on family matters. Sixth house, fifth house Lord is Mars. Is placed in the third house. This does give children an intense focus in this chart, and they'll be a little bit deceitful or a little bit dishonest if I'm being truthful with you. Um, Sixth house Lord is Jupiter. Jupiter is in the 12th in his chart. That's actually good. It gives the sign the ability to save money through self-discipline. Um, oh, I apologize. Fifth house Lord. One, two, three, four, five, six. Yeah, that's right. Sixth house Lord. Seventh house Lord is Saturn. Saturn's in the ninth house, which should give some luck in relationship matters, but it is going to be very slow. It's going to seem like it's going to be a long time before relationship matters get resolved. Rahu is in the eighth house. There are people uh, actively conspiring against you, but the good news is over the next month, it'll come right out into the open. So um, that's why I'm thinking a lot of these investigations that are going on right now, not necessarily in just in the United States, but around the world, are good things because we can find out who's been telling the truth and who's been fibbing to us. It won't last long. Um, essentially, after the eclipse month is up, you'll see attempts to cover up things again, and that's still going on as well. But I think one of the things is, especially during this next month between now and September 25th, there'll be a lot of stuff coming out, a lot that's been hidden from people. So that's for me, that's always a good thing. Okay, I know some people don't want to know about that stuff, but for me, that's always a good thing. Um, let's see now. It's always better to know the unpleasant truth than the pleasant lies, right? So at least from this particular chart, so that Rahu in the eighth house, again, hidden conspiracies, basically, but again, they're not really all going to be all that. They're going to be much more obvious than they normally are. Saturn's in the ninth house. Again, slow growth in terms of um, financial success, but if you stick with it, you will achieve some. And we've already spoken about that Jupiter in the 12th house. For Leo, Leo has Venus and Mercury in the 12th house. This is a somewhat good combination, indicates some travel connected with career and also some financial savings realized from friends and also from income. So this isn't bad. This actually does tend to make the sign work a little bit better. This sign will speak harshly, though. It will seem to be a little bit more confused than normal. This is essentially, so we'll see after this month whether or not this is a long-term phenomenon or a short-term phenomenon. Uh, basic, basically, um, basically, at least from the chart, good for saving money. But again, I would wash my harsh words if I were a Leo rising or sun sign. And this is August 15th through September 15th. Um, Rahu's in the seventh house. Relationship partners will start to assume some prominence. Excuse me. All right. So we're back to Leo again. Um, and so relationship partners will start to gain some prominence. Again, for people who want, um, let's say, um, trying to think of a good way to put it. Saturn is in the eighth house. So for people who want things to essentially stay as they are, or want things to be static or not um, move in either direction, it's going to be a disappointing month for them because this Saturn retrograde will bring up old news, and for until around the end of November, and we'll spit it out at this particular sign. And I think it'll be interesting because this sign will be able to see very clearly who its enemies are and who its enemies are not. We have Jupiter in the 11th house. That's a very good placement for financial growth. Venus and Mercury in the 12th house, good for financial success. So certain planets like benefics in the 12th house tend to be extraordinarily good for saving money. So that's one of the positives of that. For Virgo, we have Virgo. This is for roughly September 15th through October 15th, and Mars is in the first house. So this sign will seem to be much more agitated or easily aggravated than normal. And Saturn's in the seventh house. This is a good placement for um, relationship partners changing their mind about things, or uh, for showing some movement, but it will make them stubborn and it will make them very persistent. Okay. So it's not necessarily a bad placement, but be prepared for your relationship partner to be very stubborn about pursuing his or her goals. Um, the second house Lord is in the 11th house, good for financial gains, but there can be some expenses because of local and federal governments. Jupiter's in the 10th house, good for expansion of career. Rahu is in the sixth house, good for overcoming enemies and overcoming bad habits. Saturn's in the seventh house. Some disappointment is indicated with relationship life, but again, this will pass. It will tend to get a little bit less um, difficult after November 24th, 25th. So overall, this isn't a bad week. Relationship life's a bit tough for Virgo, but other than that, he's actually, and again, it's an expensive month for a lot of people. So certain signs have it a little bit worse than others. Virgo is one of those signs. Um, for Libra, Libra has, so this is October 15th to November 15th, or moon rising sign in Virgo, or even Aruda Lagna, this little guy up here in the first house. If you know that, that's a little bit of an advanced concept in Vedic astrology, but the Aruda Lagna is like another representation of yourself where your attention is focused. And so there are different interpretations of that, but that's my interpretation of it. And so Libra has Venus, and Venus is focused on career and communications. It wants to actually reach out to people, communicate with people, deal with people. And Jupiter's in the ninth house. Again, that's a good placement. good for fulfillment of desires, and but also enemies will tend to be more active during this particular period. Um, Saturn's in the sixth house, good for overcoming obstacles through persistence for Libra. Overall, I'm very good for Libra. This is relationship life. Relationship partners will want to spend money more fluidly, but they'll want to spend it on houses or cars or things like that. And again, because it's Saturn aspecting it, it looks more like repairs. Uh, the other thing is, so Sun, Moon, K2, new friendships, new and involving friendships, maybe unusual friendships, and maybe even some aspirations getting pushed aside so you can focus on more important things. So this isn't a bad, it's a transformative month for a lot of people. It's particularly true for Libra in terms of its aspirations and its goals in life. For Scorpio, that's November 15th through December 15th. We have the Gati Lagna in the first house. Um, and we also, so this is a lot of focus on relationship life, maybe good opportunities for relationship, maybe with a younger person. Uh, but it'll be delayed because Saturn's aspecting the seventh house in this chart. Mars is in the 11th house, so there'll be new friendships for this sign and new financial gains. Career life, though, will seem to be stymied or staggered, and you may even see a lot of Scorpios rethinking their career choices. Um, Venus and Mercury are in the ninth house. That's overall a good placement. And Jupiter in the eighth house. So that's good for luck, good for communications, good for education. Jupiter in the eighth house is very good for financial gains and also for charisma for the sign. Rahu is in the uh, fourth house. Some dissatisfaction with home life. Saturn is in the fifth. Some dissatisfaction with children or with creative activities. So there seems to be some kind of block going on creatively for this sign. But overall, this month should be good for recognition for Scorpio. And you should see some increased financial gains for this sign, but from unexpected sources. For Sagittarius, as I indicated before, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars are both aspecting the first house in this chart. And so that indicates pressure from the home front, um, optimism from relationship partners, and a real strong desire to make work progress. I think from this combination, this sign, and we also have Gulika, who's sort of like a little bit of a difficult planet. It's really a calculated point. It's essentially like a small Saturn in the first house, and I'll only talk about these upagrahas if they're really important for the chart. Uh, and Mritu is in the 10th house. So this may indicate a change in direction of career or maybe even a change in focus in career for this particular sign. Uh, the second house, Lord, is Saturn, is placed in the fourth. Some gains are indicated through property, but a lot of this is really connected with stabilizing property or making sure that you correct everything that needs to be done with family, with property, with your security. Rahu is in the third house. This is a good combination for financial growth. Um, Rahu in Aquarius, again, technological growth as well. Jupiter's in the seventh house. This protects the chart largely because Jupiter aspecting the first house or in the first house is considered to be a protective entity. Uh, Venus and Mercury. Again, this sign will seem to be very charismatic or very um, easily successful, at least from the chart. Sun, Moon, K2 in the ninth house. Again, some uncertainty about the direction you're taking in life. There may be certain things you'll drop and maybe focus on and maybe just pivot in direction and take up new priorities. Um, but overall, this isn't a bad week for Sagittarius. Capricorn is so Sagittarius is December 15th through January 15th. Sorry, I didn't say that. Capricorn is January 15th through February 15th, roughly. And part of this sign is in the third house, so it'll give great ability to fulfill ambitions. Rahu is technically in its own sign in this chart, so there will be some increase in finances through technology or through technological means. Uh, Jupiter's in the sixth house. It's relatively good for negotiations for the sign. Venus and Mercury are in the seventh house. Uh, New relationship potential, especially in business, with younger parties or attractive people. Sun, K2, Moon, excuse me, are in the eighth house. This does make the sign attractive, but can halt things like dividends or things that are due to you financially. It can stymie them just a little bit. Let's see now. Mars is in the ninth house. Overall, this is a good placement for this sign. Mars is exalted in Capricorn in the birth chart, and it gives financial gains to this sign if it's placed in the ninth house. So overall, not a bad chart for Capricorn, but certainly some problems with siblings and some dissatisfaction with financial status, which again is consistent with Capricorn's overall um, goals in life. Aquarius. Aquarius is February 15th through March 15th, and we see Rahu in the first house, stationary direct, which is good. K2's in the seventh house. Maybe rethinking relationship partners, maybe a little bit angry or impatient with relationship partners, but relationship partners will be a little bit bossy or difficult to say no to with this placement. But you'll see Rahu going through a lot of indecisiveness about relationships, especially over the next 6 months or so. And Mars, but again, don't jump at a new relationship right now because Mars is in your eighth house. You'll attract somebody who's physically compelling, but not really a good match for you. Somebody who'll take advantage of you. Saturn's in the second house, make the demeanor of this planet a little bit pessimistic. Now, or this sign a little bit pessimistic, a little bit difficult to please. Let's see now. Third house Lord is in the uh, eighth, is in the ninth house, is in the eighth house, excuse me. And so that's, again, that's not a bad combination. This is good for overcoming desires and or suppressing desires. So that's a good combination. Fourth house Lord is Venus, placed in the sixth house. So this is essentially um, achievement of goals, but with a lot of struggle and politeness. Jupiter's in the fifth house. Good, generally good relationships with children. And that's about it for Aquarius. Career life looks like it's a little bit buried or a little bit difficult to achieve, but this sign will achieve some recognition career-wise this week. So that's actually a good thing. Um, for Pisces, last but not least, I'm sorry, March 15th through April 15th, Saturn sits in the first house as Lord of the 11th and 12th house, so it does give a lot of financial obligations. Be careful of compulsive spending. This is true of most signs this month because Rahu will want the newest and fanciest things on the market, and it will um, compel you to um, buy the newest and best and not be careful. Okay, so that's just the words of the wise don't, there's going to be this compulsion to have like the newest and the best thing. Um, Jupiter's in the fourth house, so there's a lot of focus on family matters, vehicular matters. Fifth house is actually pretty good, so children will be relatively well behaved, although a little bit difficult at times. They may even have some psychological depression at times. This Sun Moon K2 conjunction is interesting because while it can cause some um, rethinking of goals, there's also a little bit of over optimism and over pessimism connected with those goals. So if you find your moods changing relatively rapidly over the next couple of days, chalk it up to that Moon K2 conjunction. This month will be a lot like that, if I'm honest with you. Mars is in the seventh house. Again, not a good month for, or not a good, yeah, not a good month really for Pisces to get into new relationships, and relationship partners will be difficult to deal with. Rahu's in the 12th house. Again, that compulsion to buy the newest and the latest and the best. So, overall, it's not a bad week, but again, there'll be a lot of change of focus for many, many signs. I would say just overall. So this will be an interesting week for a lot of people because they'll find a lot of their expectations um, flipped or turned upside down, and that'll continue throughout the entire month. All right, so let's look at the astrological map, and then you can be on your merry way and focus on other things. Of course, you can stop at any time, but if you come this far, why not continue until the end? All right, so we have a sun line going over Hawaii and Alaska. Again, these areas have drawn my attention mainly because um, this is close to a lot of the earthquake activity that happened in Russia, and there's also moon activity down here. Um, Line adjacent to the moon line, so this will give some anxiety about the economy. Um, I've spoken with you a lot um, about this part of the world and also California. California has a Saturn line uh, going down it or close to it, and there's a rising Mars line over here. So again, we've seen um, a lot of activity coming out of California, a lot of political activity coming out of California. That's really what it kind of kind of represents, but it's also kind of a dangerous period for this section of the country. And I don't mean that in a pessimistic or cataclysmic kind of a way. It's just uh, difficult weather patterns and uh, maybe even some scandals in government, especially over here and even in Alaska. The other thing is that I noticed was I've been talking with you a lot about Alberta's uh, interest in seceding from Canada, And it looks like the referendum is going to, uh, they're moving aggressively towards the referendum. So that's what the Mars line can indicate. And we also have a Jupiter line over here. So like I said, this is kind of interesting what's happening in this part of Canada. They're bringing, um, they don't feel like they're part of of the rest of Canada. Maybe that's the best way to explain it. And they're contributing a lot in terms of resources and wealth, and they don't feel like they're getting equivalent value, or they're being ignored by Ottawa. That's kind of an oversimplification, but that's how I understand the story. And also down here in Arizona, there's a Mars line, so we might see some violence in Arizona, Utah. Um, but this one has me interested because there might be some anxiety or worry or even government scandal in Alaska. Sorry to jump back to that. And it could even cover the west coast of the United States. Um, there's so that Mars line, I find it both interesting and especially because Mars is crossing over with Jupiter, that indicates legal action is taking place. We have a Venus line, and that Mars line is also going down through Mexico, so there's some unrest in Mexico as well. It looks like from this chart. Venus is running through us and all the way down to, excuse me, I have to scratch, all the way down through Louisiana and Texas and down close to Guatemala and Nicaragua. And there's a Mercury line. So these areas are not in bad shape. This part of the world is not in bad shape. The only thing we normally want to watch out for with Venus lines is flooding and maybe, um, I know there was a corruption trial. I mentioned it last week, a corruption trial brought against uh, the New Orleans mayor, but this is where New Orleans is. So again, we may see some more corruption suits coming up because Venus is one of the legal planets in Vedic astrology. There's a Mercury line going through New York, Pennsylvania, close to Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and all the way down to the Florida Keys, and through Cuba and through Panama, and all the way down through Ecuador and Peru. And so that tends to indicate we'll hear a lot more information about about those parts of the country. Um, Mercury, a lot of emotional activity, uh, maybe even protest activity in these parts of the country. Um, and the reason I'm saying protest is because Mercury is a communication planet. It isn't always going to tell us nice things. Okay. Is going to complain about things when things seem wrong to it. The sun is passing through Guyana and close to Venezuela, so this could indicate increased governmental tension between these two areas. There have been some rumors that um, uh, there's a potential war brewing down there between Venezuela and Guyana. I'm not sure what the details are. And also, Brazil has, and Bolivia to Argentina, we have a sun line. So again, this can indicate disruption to the governments in those countries. There's a moon line running through, a moon Rahu line running through Brazil. Some governmental scandals are indicated from this particular line. And I need to move this over a little bit. And there's a Saturn line off the coast of Brazil. So this indicates some economic difficulty for Brazil. And like I said, just a lot more um, difficulty facing the government. There's a Mars line running through Greenland and down through Iceland, down through the Azores, and this could end down to the Canaries, could indicate earthquake activity or volcanic activity, but again, that's only a possibility. That's not a certain. There's a Jupiter line running up through the west coast of Africa, up through Libya, yeah, up through excuse me, up through yeah, up through Libya, up through um, France, southern France, into Switzerland and Germany. And usually what that means is there's some kind of plebiscite or some kind of vote taking place. This is hitting Finland and up uh, into Russia. And there's a Venus line running up through Italy, Greece, and Eastern Europe, all kind of converging uh, in Russia. Finally, there's a Mercury line running up through that part of the world, running up through um, Algeria, running up through Tur Turkey, Bulgaria, and into Ukraine. So again, these spots in the world, these places in the world will have a lot of activity going on, and especially connected with commerce and especially connected with the news. There is a Saturn line, it looks like, I'm sorry, a Sun line running up through South Africa, through Egypt, all the way up to Sudan and Egypt, and all the way up through Iraq and Saudi Arabia. And this indicates some diminishing power and some governmental scandal, especially hitting Saudi Arabia and Iran. You have a Saturn line also going through Iran. This indicates kind of a difficult time for the Iranian people. I hope that's not so. And we have what's this line? Excuse me. My apologies. I have a small tickle in my throat. Looks like a Mars line running up through here. So some conflict, maybe in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And there's some difficulty in the west coast of India. Excuse me, I have to do this. I don't know where that tickle in my throat's coming from, but it's I got to get rid of it. Uh, there is a Jupiter line running up through India, so actually India is relatively blessed for now. And we have a Venus line, so yeah, India's in good shape. India is surrounded by Venus and Jupiter, so that's actually positive. There's a Mercury line running up through uh, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Myanmar has had a lot of major problems lately, both in terms of its governance and in terms of natural disasters hitting it. And there's a sun line going up through China. Um, this is interesting because the sun's in its own side right now, but it's obstructed by K2. So basically, this indicates China is making progress, but it's being stymied by other forces. Uh, and Australia is also uh, being caught in those forces, and so are the Philippines and so is Borneo and Indonesia to a lesser extent. The other area where there's possible government scandal is Indonesia, this part of Indonesia, and Central Australia and Japan, and maybe some weakening of the economy in Japan and Australia. Finally, there's a Jupiter line coming close to New Zealand and a Venus line coming close to New Zealand. So New Zealand looks like it's a little bit off the hook just for a little while, at least according to this chart. So it looks like things are going to start to normalize a little bit in New Zealand. Okay, so that's all I have for this week. Oh, and by the way, I don't want to forget about Tasmania. The Saturn line is going through Tasmania too. So um, I don't want to forget about Tasmania because Tasmania is actually a very special place to me um, for personal reasons. So so essentially, we're seeing a lot of scandal markers in the chart, a lot of governmental or reputational scandal markers in the chart, and a lot of what I would call government interference or wobbly positions for governments, even though governments are strong for the time being. So we'll see what happens, but I am expecting a lot more disruption in terms of um, political life over the next 6 months at least, probably longer, just because of where the eclipses are falling. Okay, so that's it for me for this week. On the plus side, we're going to see a lot of technological innovation, and we are going to see some unusual reconfigurations of governments and countries over the next few years. Uh, I'm not necessarily talking about the United States absorbing Canada. You know, that's not really what's on my radar. It's more I just find it interesting what's happening in Alberta, and I'm just tending to think that if they met, so something like that doesn't happen overnight. You know, so they can't really just leave and say, know, and join another country. And if Alberta probably has enough financial resources, they could form their own country. You know, it's not, it doesn't mean they'll necessarily jump uh, on board with the United States. So a lot of those things are just um, interesting. An astrologer I knew, James Kelleher, many years ago actually said the United States would enter its expansionist period during the Rahu Mahadasha, and it looks like that's true at least in terms of the talk we're hearing right now. So we'll just see how that develops. Um, it's it's interesting because if we're looking at it in terms of natural resources, um, Ca Canada may be one of the largest um, repositories of natural resources in the world. But the United States still has untapped areas that we haven't investigated for years and years and years. Like there's a huge, apparently there's a huge lithium deposit in it's up near Utah, and so it depends on where and lithium is useful in making electric batteries for electric cars. But also, I think you're also going to see a lot of technology develop over the next few years, which may make certain technologies outdated before they're fully implemented, if that makes sense. So, uh, so we'll see what happens. The other thing that I haven't spoken about is this is probably a good month for AI because of the Venus, Mercury, Jupiter triumvirate in those particular signs. And we'll see how that develops over the next few years. There's a great deal of positive and a great deal of negative to AI. So so it depends on how we manage it. Okay. All right. So that's it for me. I hope I haven't bored you too much. I hope you're still engaged and interested, and uh, we'll go from there. So thank you very much for sharing this time with me. I really appreciate it. I hope you like the new haircut, and I look forward to seeing you next week. All right. Thanks a lot, folks. I'll see you later. Again, I love you all. Thank you very much for watching, and namaste.